Vasily Antonovich Antonov was born on the 28th of February 1875 to a peasant's family. In earlier sources, the village of Karenevskaya of Kuban-Cossack Warrior Host was mentioned as his birthplace, while in later ones, the village of Simanovo of Toropets County of Tver Province. In his youth, Vasily finished a town 5-class college. Nothing is known about the life of Vasily Antonov until 1927. Vasily Antonovich Antonov began his confessional cross-bearing during post-revolutionary times of trouble, widespread persecution of the Orthodox Church and faith, the decay of religious traditions, as well as the church stratification. After finishing Petrograd Seminary, Vasily Antonov married maiden Pelageya Georgievna Butrakova, and in 1927 was ordained a deacon to the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary of the village of Alferyevo of Pereslavl district of Yaroslavl region. On the 23rd of January the following year, Father Vasily was ordained a priest to the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker in the village of Skobleva of the same district. At St. Nicholas Church, priest Vasily Antonov served for more than a year, and in February 1929 moved to Ruza district of Moscow region, starting to serve at the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of Kazan in the village of Gorbova. Later, possibly after the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of Kazan was closed, Father Vasily began to serve at the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of the Sign in the village of Komleva, replacing there arrested archpriest Semyon Lepedevsky. In 1935, according to the petition of the faithful, priest Vasily Antonov was appointed to the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary of the village of Pokrovskaya Sheremetyevo of the same district. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, the faithful knew the clergyman since the time when he served in the village of Gorbova of Ruza district, while they were parishioners there. The priest preached almost every Sunday despite the prohibition from the authorities. According to his own words, the clergyman wrote sermons himself, making samples from the Holy Writ. Moreover, Father Vasily Antonov went across the parish, having talks and gathering the faithful. As witnesses testified, the priest said that soon in any case the Soviet authorities would close the church, while faithful people would be persecuted. He gave the examples. Look, bells were taken off. It is the premise of closure of the church. Also, Pope Antonov was said to be a friend of Pope of the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker of the village of Nikolskaya, Valentin Kulikov. They visited each other. In 1935, Pope Valentin Kulikov was arrested, while Pope Antonov resented bitterly this fact. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, in September the same year, priest Vasily Antonov told people, "If you, the faithful, support, the church will exist for 2 more years. If you do not, it will be closed by the Bolsheviks." In March 1936, somebody denounced Father Vasily, testifying that a priest agitated in the anti-Soviet way among collective farmers of the village, distributing counter-revolutionary leaflets, meaning the booklet Christianity and Socialism, issued in 1918 and found during the search in the house of the clergyman. On the 28th of March 1936, priest Vasily Antonovich Antonov was arrested by the NKVD of Ruza district, being imprisoned in Mozhaisk. At the moment of the arrest, the priest lived in the town of Ruza, while his family consisted only of his wife, Pelageya Georgievna, aged 34. In the column of property it was written that Father Vasily had nothing. The 61-year-old clergyman was accused of his sermons. For example, on the 14th of October 1935 he preached, "Our orthodoxy is encircled by enemies, like earlier it was beneath the yoke of Turkish aliens. And the orthodoxy was saved by Virgin Mary, who made sign, and the enemy disappeared. The same will happen now. Soon Our Lady will appear and scatter all the enemies of the Russian Orthodoxy." On the 15th of March 1936, priest Vasily Antonov preached, "Faithful people began to forget the Church and stopped being Christians. The reason of it is that now the time of Antichrist has come. Orthodox people have entered a kolkhoz. You lend yourself to it, without knowledge of the fact that collective farms will bring nothing to you. I call you on not to go to a kolkhoz on big holidays, going to a church instead." On the 16th of May 1936, the rural dean of Ruza district, Archpriest Ion Berezkin, gave his evidence against Father Vasily. Antonov has anti-Soviet point of view. It is proved by the following. In the end of March at my place, talking about taxes of the church and clergy, Antonov declared, "Now Russian clergy has a hard time. We are heavily taxed by the Soviet authorities. As a result, churches are being closed, while we have nothing to live upon. In one word, the Soviet regime is the persecution of Christ." Also, if the collective farms had not existed, the churches would not have been closed, while we would have lived better. In these collective farms, peasants are made to work on holidays. Moreover, Antonov demanded from his parishioners things that are opposite the laws of the Soviet authorities. For example, he did not allow to take Holy Communion people if they were married at a registry. All these facts were told to me as a rural dean by some of his parishioners who came to me with complaints in the end of February 1936. During the confrontation, Father Vasily confirmed that he preached, but his sermons were not anti-Soviet. Answering the question of the interrogator about the reasons of his anti-Soviet talks about the policy of the Soviet authorities, the prior of the Intercession Church said, "It is due to the fact that Soviet authorities heavily oppressed churches with taxes, preventing people from going to churches, while now only cripples and ill people go to churches, providing no benefit. I plead guilty in these words." In the indictment of Father Vasily it was written, "Being alien towards the Soviet authorities and their events, Antonov Vasily Antonovich is engaged in anti-Soviet activity, preaching and calling people on at the church, as well as provocative gossips about the closure of churches by the Soviet authorities. While performing religious rites, he brought discredit on the laws of the Soviet authorities connected with civil marriage, distributed the booklet Christianity and Socialism by Kondratiev." Being questioned as an indicted, Antonov Vasily Antonovich pleaded guilty, only denying the fact of distributing a counter-revolutionary leaflet. He said that kept it for personal advantage. His guilt was proved enough, both by the testimony of witnesses and during the confrontation. On the 17th of June, the case was sent to the special meeting of the NKVD of USSR to review. Despite the fact that in the column of health conditions of the priest it was written that he was ill, and in the reference from the hospital of Ruza it was pointed out that Father Vasily, who had myocarditis and rheumatism, was not able to do hard work, on the 2nd of July 1936, according to the 58th article paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, for counter-revolutionary agitation, by the special meeting of the NKVD of USSR, priest Vasily Antonovich Antonov was sentenced to 3 years of exile in the Northern Territory. The elderly clergyman served his sentence in Arkhangelsk region. And in 1939, when the term of his imprisonment ended, Father Vasily was forbidden to live in big cities, and he had to move to the town of Kovrov of Vladimir region, where at first he worked as a watchman in the kolkhoz. In 1943, all around the Soviet Union, undamaged churches were opened. The state decided to do it, to use the authority of the Russian Orthodox Church in gathering money for the needs of the army. Soon the Patriarchate was restored, while a few survived clergymen returned from prisons and labor camps. Father Vasily Antonov began to serve at a newly opened church of St. John the Warrior of the town of Kovrov of Vladimir region, but already on the 13th of June 1945, according to the notorious 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the priest was arrested along with his wife and sentenced to 5 years of imprisonment in the town of Vladimir. His wife was sentenced to 7 years of imprisonment. Her further fate is unknown. In 1950, 75-year-old priest Vasily Antonov was released. He began to live in the town of Kovrov. According to the unconfirmed information, on the 8th of December the same year, the elderly clergyman was arrested once again, being exiled to the village of Ploskaya of Kovrov district of Vladimir region. On the 18th of October 1991, priest Vasily Antonovich Antonov was rehabilitated. Alexey Petrovich Bogolepov was born on the 26th of January 1880 in Yakotsky churchyard of Dmitrov County of Moscow Province to the family of deacon of the Church of the Nativity of Virgin Mary, Peter Konstantinovich Bogolepov, and his wife Maria Vasilievna. It is known that in the family there were sons Sergei, Vasily, and Pavel, as well as daughters Olga and Lydia. Alexei spent his childhood at Podbolotsky churchyard, where his father was soon appointed a priest to the Church of the Nativity of Christ. Alexey Petrovich finished Volokоламsk Spiritual College and entered Bethany Spiritual Seminary, being expelled after the second class. On the 12th of June 1899, he was appointed a psalmist to the Church of the Transfiguration of Christ of the village of Spass-Kositsi of Veria County of Moscow Province. On the 1st of June the following year, the young psalmist was blessed to wear a sticharion. Here, Alexey Bogolepov served for almost 7 years. On the 19th of April 1906, psalmist Alexey Bogolepov was ordained a deacon to the Church of the Transfiguration of Christ of the village of Slednevo of Ryza County of Moscow Province. These years, Father Alexey married maiden Maria Nikolaevna. 3 children were born to the Bogolepovs. On the 2nd of March 1911, Deacon Alexey was ordained a priest to the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker of Luzhki churchyard of the same county, where he served for 20 years. Since October 1911, Father Alexey was appointed a teacher of the Law of God of Butakova Zemstvo School. During his service, the priest was awarded with a waist cloth, a skufia, a kamilavka, and a backdraw cross. Before the revolution, Father Alexey Bogolepov had a house with a yard, 1 horse, 1 cow, and 33 hectares of land. After Soviet authorities came to force, the clergymen of the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker faced repressions. In 1918, after post-revolutionary events, priest Jan Troitsky was arrested in charges of anti-Soviet agitation. According to the questionnaire of the arrested priest, since the beginning of the revolution the clergymen of St. Nicholas Church were deprived of voting rights. In March 1919, Father Alexey Bogolepov was recruited on military duty, but served as a clerk at the Statistical Office of Ryza County. On the 5th of January 1930, Deacon Nikolai Shitalov, who had recently come to Luzhki from the Church of Life-Giving Trinity in the village of Goretovo, was arrested, and already on the 23rd of February the same year, according to the 58th article paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, by the special meeting of the OGPU, Father Nikolai was sentenced to 3 years of concentration camps. In April 1931, according to the 62nd article of the Criminal Code of Russia, Father Alexey Bogolepov was arrested along with the wife of Archpriest Alexei Troitsky, Alexandra Alexeyevna, and trader Yegor Bashilov. The priest was accused of taking part in political sabotage. Already on the 26th of April, the People's Court sentenced the clergyman to 2 years of imprisonment and further exile from Moscow region for 5 years. Priest Alexey Bogolepov served his sentence in Shutura Pit Provision Labor Camp of Moscow region. Upon his release on the 28th of April 1933, the clergyman was exiled from Moscow region. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, being exiled, Priest Alexey Bogolepov chose Voronezh region for living, wandering across villages and trying to work as a priest there. In the letters to Archbishop Zakaria from different people dated May 1935, Father Alexey was mentioned as the prior of the Church of the Nativity of Virgin Mary of the village of Lubyakovo of Voronezh region, while since the 3rd of June the same year, according to the petition of a village council, the clergyman was bound to be appointed to the Church of Michael the Archangel of the village of Malye Yesinki of Shuchina district of Voronezh region to bear pastoral duties there. Probably due to the fact that the Church of Michael the Archangel had already been closed, the priest began to serve at the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker of the village of Nikolskaya of Arkhangelsk district of the same region. On the 18th of February 1936, Father Alexey was appointed the rural dean of Arkhangelsk district. According to the reference of the Nikolskaya village council, priest Alexey Bogolepov served at the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker from autumn 1935 to June 1937. After the faithful accepted another priest, Bogolepov left the territory of Nikolskoye village council. From time to time, he appeared in the village of Nikolskoye and secretly performed religious rites in houses, later disappearing. In the village of Nikolskoye, being a priest, he rented a flat, having no property. On the 29th of July 1937, by Voronezh Diocese, the prior of the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker of the village of Nikolskoye, Father Alexei Bogolepov, was given the right to serve at the Church of Michael the Archangel of the village of Maly Yasinki again. However, as priest Alexei Bogolepov later explained, he could not move there, as there was no transport. On the 30th of September the same year, Father Alexei moved to the village of Podgorne to work as a priest at the church of St. Tikhon, where the prior had just been arrested. The priest spent the night in the house of nuns Anna Kostina and Feodosia Perova. The arrival of a clergyman could not help being noticed. Already the next day, on the 1st of October 1937, Father Alexei Bogolepov was arrested along with the nuns who sheltered him. He was accused of counter-revolutionary church monarchic agitation. The 57-year-old clergyman was also accused of creating the counter-revolutionary church monarchic group and gathering illegal meetings. The following day, during the search, 5 rubles, liturgical books and objects, including an anti-mincium, as well as old priest's clothes and some photos were found. Also, there was the pawned ticket about the silver ostensory that, along with his own silver pectoral cross, was considered as stolen. Answering the question of the interrogator about stealing silver objects from the church, Father Alexei Bogolepov said that the cross was his own, that he bought when he was ordained a priest. Speaking about the ostensory, the clergyman testified that from the church of the village of Babakova he took the silver ostensory that the inspector of Arkhangelsk district confiscated from him. Then he brought it to the state bank in April 1937. He took no more church property. According to the testimony of witnesses, during the Great Lent of 1936, Bogolepov agitated in the counter-revolutionary way against the Soviet regime, praising capitalism. Also, he slandered the Soviet authorities and used the religious feelings of the female collective farmer who visited him. In addition, Father Alexei Bogolepov was accused of the counter-revolutionary propaganda against the Constitution of the USSR. Allegedly, he did this on the 1st of May 1937, while serving public prayer in the houses of faithful people during religious holiday Easter. The priest answered that he only had a talk with nun Nyanila Sushkova about the fence that Nikolskoye village council decided to break for not paying church taxes. Father Alexei did not plead guilty in counter-revolutionary activity, testifying that he wandered across different villages to find a place to settle. The priest also pointed out that he did not agitate in the counter-revolutionary way among the faithful that visited him. The 57-year-old clergyman was accused of commemoration of former Queen Alexandra during the liturgies, instilling the faithful with monarchic regime. Being asked about the troparion of Queen Alexandra, the priest answered that the commemoration was once a year at the church during liturgies. The case of the clergyman who was imprisoned in Voronezh was sent to the Troika to review. Already on the 28th of October 1937, according to the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, by the NKVD Troika of Voronezh region, wandering Pope Alexei Petrovich Bogolepov was sentenced to 10 years of labor camps. The further fate of the clergyman is still unknown. On the 30th of September 1989, priest Alexei Petrovich Bogolepov was rehabilitated for the lack of the body of a crime. Pavel Nikolaevich Bogolubov was born on the 18th of June 1879 in the county town of Ruza of Moscow province to the family of Deacon Nikolai Bogolubov. On the 20th of September 1900, after graduating from Moscow Spiritual Seminary on the 2nd class, Pavel Nikolaevich was appointed a psalmist by Vladimir, the Metropolitan of Moscow, to the Church of St. Elizabeth at the Male Gymnasium of St. Elizabeth in Moscow. On the 20th of July 1906, by Nathanael, the abbot of the Andronikov Monastery of the Savior, Pavel Nikolaevich was ordained a priest to the Cathedral of the Resurrection of Christ in the town of Ruza. At that time, Pavel Nikolaevich married Ludmila Dmitrievna. The couple had 3 daughters, Zoya, Olga, and Maria. Since 1908, Father Pavel became the director of Ruza Poor House. Since the 22nd of January 1910, he was the constant member of Ruza Department of Moscow Diocesan College Council, while since the 9th of August the same year, the member of Rural Dean's Council. On the 10th of November 1909, the priest was awarded with a waistcloth, while in 1913 with a skufia. Unfortunately, there is no information about the life of Father Pavel from 1916 until 1933. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, after the revolution the priest had a diary that was partly anti-Soviet. That was the reason he was sentenced to death penalty, but then he was granted amnesty and called for Ria Militia, where he served as a clerk. According to the materials of the interrogations, in 1922, when church property was confiscated to help the starving, Bogolubov said, "The starving will not get easier from gold and silver, as they will be used for other purposes. Patriarch Tikhon is right, giving a proclamation not to give church property away." Those years, the family of Father Pavel Bogolubov lived in the town of Ruza in a separate house 56 square meters in size, covered with wood shingles and having a barn. In the beginning of 1930s, the priest was with no particular place of service, and served at different parishes. On the 15th of January 1933, being accused in the anti-Soviet agitation, Father Pavel Bogolubov was arrested by the OGPU department of Ruza district of Moscow region. At that time, the family of Father Pavel consisted of a wife and 4 daughters from the age of 12 to the age of 22. Priest Vasily Vinogradov, who lived in the town of Ruza and worked as a stableman of Krasnaya Ruza factory, gave evidence against him. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, Father Pavel organized a group of the deprived people arranging wine parties where anti-Soviet talks took place. From October to December 1932, the priest allegedly said the following: "Soviet authorities are the punishment of God. They are the authorities of Antichrist. We, the clergy, will serve until these authorities fall. We will hide in forests, but will not give up our service. Communists will not rule for long. Soon their domination will be over, as it is not strong enough. From day to day their things are going bad. There is nothing everywhere. Now we have the time when the Soviet authorities forbid doing anything. We are being oppressed and taxed heavily. What will be next?" When someone said to Father Pavel Bogolubov that he needed to give up the priesthood, he answered, "I will not give up the priesthood, as these authorities are not strong enough, and soon or late their domination will be over, and all the churches will be restored." During the interrogations, Father Pavel said, "In 1917, after the October Revolution, when the Soviet authorities appeared, and the church was separated from the state, we, the clergy, with me among others, considered that separation beneficial for us, as we had no desire to help the Soviet authorities. We could not stand the Soviet authorities, and we were waiting for its fall. We, popes, were deprived of our welfare, were taxed heavily. That was the reason of our dissatisfaction with the Soviet authorities. The authorities are also persecuting the clergy. That is totally unfair towards any of us. There was the time I felt insulted by the Soviet authorities for being taxed. The Soviet authorities are bad because they have deprived the clergy, the source of earning for a living, food. Literally, we have to beg going to the houses of our parishioners. Meanwhile, the Soviet authorities deprived our children with any advantages. They are forbidden to study and work." Despite the absence of any real evidence, investigation case number 19 of Bogolubov Pavel Nikolaevich was presented to the OGPU Troika for discussion. On the 30th of March 1933, according to the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, priest Pavel Bogolubov was sentenced by the OGPU Troika to 3 years of exile to Kazakhstan. The further life of the priest is unknown. On the 22nd of January 1993, priest Pavel Bogolubov was rehabilitated by the prosecutor's office of Moscow region.
Lavrentiy Nikolaevich Veselovsky was born on the 8th of May 1881 in the village of Ivanovskaya Brointsy County of Moscow province to the family of the deacon of the Church of Eli the Prophet Nikolai Veselovsky. In 1902, after finishing Moscow Diocesan College of Icon Painting, Lavrentiy Nikolaevich was appointed a psalmist to the Church of Christ the Savior in the village of Ubor in Zvenigorod County of Moscow province. On the 5th of October 1905, psalmist of the church in the village of Ubor, Lavr Veselovsky was appointed to the Cathedral of the Life-Giving Trinity in the town of Podolsk in Moscow province, there he served until the end of 1917. After the revolution, the priest was deprived of his voting rights as a clergyman. By 1918, psalmist Lavrentiy Veselovsky was ordained a priest to the Church of the Intercession of Our Lady in the village of Yerino in Podolsk, country of Moscow province. There he served for next 10 years. On the 20th of May 1926, by the resolution of Alexei, the Bishop of Serpukhov, Father Lavrentiy was awarded a waist cloth for his zealous service to the Church of God. In 1928 or early 1929, priest Lavrentiy Veselovsky was appointed to the Church of the Resurrection of Christ in the village of Vasilievska of Ruza district of Moscow region. According to the materials of the investigation filed by the OGPU officers, Father Lavrentiy complained about the unbearable taxes and even went to Moscow to appeal, but in vain. By the early 1930s, the priest widowed. In early January 1933, priest Lavrentiy Veselovsky wrote an application to the Cult Commission of the Moscow Region Executive Committee, where he indicated, "Never having my own property as well as livestock and land, I have lived all the time in the city. Now I live in the village and I exist only on income. I am 52 years old with my mother, 80 years old, and my son, who is in the Uriya militia, is working receiving a notice of meat procurement. This is all my desire. I do not have the means to fulfill the obligation. Therefore, I ask the Commission to understand the situation." The statement was accompanied by a certificate from the Church Council of the Resurrection Church confirming the circumstances indicated in the priest's statement. On the 14th of March 1933, Father Lavrentiy, together with Ivan Alferov, was arrested for anti-Soviet agitation. The priest was also blamed for drinking and communication with criminals who kept neighboring villages in fear. According to the indictment, priest Lavrentiy Veselovsky and Ivan Alferov were accused of being connected with each other, agitating collective farmers to disrupt economic and political campaigns, being guilty in sabotage. Of all the accusations, the priest admitted only that he drank alcohol. Already on the 7th of April, the case was completed and transferred to the Troika for consideration. On the 26th of May, the Troika of the OGPU, under Article 58, Paragraph 10, sentenced priest Lavrentiy Veselovsky to 3 years of exile to Kazakhstan. In the beginning of 1935, after returning from his exile in the town of Alma-Ata, the priest left for the village of Kasilino in Shakhovo district of the Moscow region and began to serve at the nearby Church of Christ the Savior in the village of Ivashkovo. But already on the 9th of March of the same year, Father Lavrentiy was arrested together with the rector of the Church of Saint Alexander Svirsky, priest Alexei Protopopov, and on the 31st of March by the special meeting on the NKVD Troika of Moscow region for counter-revolutionary activities. They were sentenced to 5 years of imprisonment in a labor camp. At first they were held in Taganka, a prison in Moscow, then they were sent to Ukht-Pichlag. Father Alexei died in the camp on the 26th of February 1939. The further fate of priest Lavrenti Veselovsky is unknown. On the 11th of December 1959, Father Lavrenti was rehabilitated by the Moscow Regional Court for lack of the body of a crime.
Ivan Alexeyevich Vinogradov was born in August 1889 in Moscow to the family of a clergyman. Ivan Alexeyevich finished the spiritual college and entered Moscow Spiritual Seminary, but was sent down from the second class. After that, by the 1st of January 1910, he was appointed a psalmist to the Church of St. Constantine and Helen in the town of Veria of Moscow province. On the 28th of April 1910, at the age of 20 and a half, he married 18-year-old maiden Lydia, the daughter of psalmist of the Trinity Church of the town of Veria Vasily Pavlovich Yakovlevsky. On the 25th of September 1912, daughter Zenida was born to the family of a clergyman. At that time, the Vinogradovs had a house, 32 square meters, with a yard, 50 square meters. On the 1st of January 1917, psalmist Ivan Vinogradov was ordained a deacon to the Church of the Domitian of Virgin Mary in the village of Myshkina of Mozhaissk County of Moscow province. Here, Father Ivan faced the revolution and served for the next 8 years. In 1925, Deacon Ivan Vinogradov was ordained a priest to the Trinity Church in St. George Churchyard of Ruza County of Moscow province. During Soviet time, Father Ivan widowed and married one more time. Olga Ivanovna Zhukova became his new wife. In November or December 1932, daughter Rima was born to the priest's family. By that time, the Vinogradovs had a house, 32 square meters, with a yard, 32 square meters, and a barn, 50 square meters, as well as 1 cow, 1 sheep, and 2 hens. Before 1929, Father Ivan also had an equipped horse with a horse vehicle. On the 7th of March 1933, priest Ivan Vinogradov was arrested according to a group case of agronomist with 56 people involved. By that time, Father Ivan lived in the village of Sherbenka of Ruza district of Moscow region. In his family there was his wife, Zhukova Olga Ivanovna, who was 38, and daughter Rima, who was only 3 months old. Father Ivan Vinogradov was accused in close connection with kulaks and saboteurs, Sukov and Bogachev, anti-Soviet agitation, and agitation against kolkhoz events, provision, etc. The priest did not plead guilty. On the 19th of May 1933, according to the 58th article, paragraphs 10 and 11 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the OGPU Troika of Moscow region sentenced priest Ivan Vinogradov to 3 years of exile to Kazakhstan. The fate of priest Ivan Vinogradov is still unknown. Ivan Alexandrovich Voznesensky was born on the 28th of July 1886 in the village of Novogorbovo of Ruza County of Moscow province, to the family of Deacon Alexander Vasilyevich Voznesensky and his wife Nadezhda Vasilyevna. The newborn was baptized on the 3rd day by the prior of the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of Smolensk, priest Grigori Nechayev. In the family there also were children: Alexei, Helen, Fyodor, Platon, George, and Nikolai. All of the sons of the clergyman followed their father's footsteps. In 1905, Ivan Alexandrovich finished Volokolamsk Spiritual College, and in 1906, by Seraphim, the Bishop of Mozhaissk, was appointed a psalmist to the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of Smolensk in the village of Voronino of Klin County of Moscow province. On the 26th of May the same year, by treat from the Bishop of Dmitrov, Ivan Voznesensky was officially appointed to the church and blessed to wear a stikarion. Those years, Ivan Alexandrovich married maiden Zinaida Vasilyeva. On the 29th of October 1907, son Nikolai was born to the Voznesenskys. On the 11th of February 1909, son Alexander. On the 25th of June 1910, daughter Zoya. On the 11th of February 1912, son Eugen. On the 28th of May 1913, son Vladimir. On the 25th of January 1915, son Vsevolod, while on the 23rd of February 1916, son Anatoly. On the 12th of June 1910, by Vasily, the Bishop of Mozhaisk, Ivan Alexandrovich was appointed a psalmist to the Cathedral of the Life-Giving Trinity at the Pokrovskaya factory in the village of Kruglino of Dmitrov County of Moscow province. Here the clergyman faced the revolution, being deprived of voting rights after it. In 1918, psalmist Ivan Voznesensky was appointed to the Church of the Nativity of Virgin Mary of the village of Selevkino Yuryevo of Dmitrov district of Moscow region, where he served until 1937. Here, on the 28th of September 1923, the eighth child, son Vyacheslav, was born to the Voznesenskys. Later Mother Zenida recollected, "We lived almost all our life in Dmitrov district. Our family was big, 8 children and we. Husbandry was our main business. In winter my husband was a carrier's trader. He carried peat and firewood to the railway station that was almost 8 kilometers away. When children were little, it was hard to live. In his free time my husband fired a furnace at the church and cleaned there. He was paid very little, but still it provided some bread for our family. After working at the church for several years he became a sexton. Our parish consisted of 40 houses and was very poor, so priests did not live there constantly. When children grew up, they began to extract peat in a peat swamp. In winter they sawed firewood and carried it and peat to the railway station. This way the whole family was busy. We never had hired workers. When our children came of age, some of them moved to Moscow to work there. Some of them stayed with us, some of them married. By 1930, psalmist Ivan Voznesensky was ordained a priest to the Church of the Nativity of Virgin Mary. The church continued services, but the Soviet authorities did not forget about it. In the reports of the Selevkino Village Council in 1931, 1934, in the additional decree it was written, "To petition about the confiscation of the house of Pope Voznesensky. The house was built by 1/2 on money of the local citizens." In 1934, Father Ivan was accused of stealing some church property, and according to Article 164 of the Criminal Code of Russia, by People's Court of Dmitrov district was sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment, but after complaint, the decision was cancelled by Moscow Regional Court. During the period of the most severe persecutions of the Russian Orthodox Church, on the 27th of November 1937, being accused in counter-revolutionary agitation and slander on Stalin's constitution, priest Ivan Voznesensky was arrested by the NKVD department of Dmitrov district. During the interrogation, the clergyman was imprisoned in Taganka. At the moment of the arrest, the family of Father Ivan Voznesensky consisted of his wife and 8 children from the age of 13 to the age of 30. Already on the 29th of November, the case was sent to the Troika to review. In the indictment, it was pointed out, Voznesensky Ivan Alexandrovich, being alien to the current regime, actively agitated in the anti-Soviet way among the population. He mainly slandered communists and Comrade Stalin, being dissatisfied with the policy of the Soviet authorities and agitating against the current regime. Voznesensky said, "Bolsheviks are able only to rob people. They placed peasants in kolkhoz in order to rob them with comfort." In summer 1937, speaking on building of socialism in the Soviet Union, Voznesensky among collective farmers declared, "Only Jesus Christ was able to build socialism, while Bolsheviks will never do it. They only clutter our minds with it." Being questioned, Voznesensky Ivan Alexandrovich did not plead guilty, but witnesses testified enough against him. Already on the 3rd of December the same year, according to the 58th article of the Criminal Code of Russia, the NKVD Troika of Moscow region sentenced the 51-year-old clergyman to 10 years of labor camps. Priest Ivan Voznesensky was exiled to the town of Mariinsk of Kemerovo region. The relatives of Father Ivan tried to find out his destiny. On the 22nd of August 1940, the wife of the clergyman wrote a letter to the chief of the Soviet security, Lavrenti Pavlovich Beria, asking him to find out, as her husband was sentenced to 10 years of imprisonment with no vivid reasons. Mother Zinaida wrote that Father Ioan in his letter pointed out that after his arrest no court took place. In his last letter he wrote that his health weakened greatly, and he could hardly work, being even given an invalid status. At the time of his last letter, priest Jan Voznesensky lived on the station of Topchiha, of Tom railway station of Altai region. The further fate of the clergyman is unknown. By the decree of Moscow Regional Committee of Deputies, dated the 8th of January 1941, the Church of the Nativity of Virgin Mary in the village of Selevkino was closed. All the church things that had been saved since the confiscation of church property were lost. On the 10th of August 1956, priest Ion Alexandrovich Voznesensky was rehabilitated by the prosecutor's office of Moscow region for the lack of the body of a crime.
Alexander Nikolaevich Kazantsev was born on the 30th of August 1880 in the village of Nikolskaya Gagarina of Ruzi County of Moscow Province, to the family of psalmist of the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker Nikolai Konstantinovich Kazantsev and his wife Claudia Ivanovna. The newborn was baptized 4 days later by local priest Ian Lebedev. The godparents were the consultor, Prince Viktor Nikolaevich Gagarin, and the wife of General Michael Dmitrovich Skobolev, Maria Nikolaevna. Alexander Nikolaevich followed his father's footsteps, and after finishing Zvenigorod Spiritual College, was appointed a psalmist to the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of Vladimir of the village of Bogorodskaya Dubna of Serpukhov County of Moscow Province. On the 7th of June 1902, at the age of 21, psalmist Alexander Kazantsev married 20-year-old Anna, the daughter of deacon Ian Bogdanov, being ordained a deacon to the Church of the Transfiguration of Christ of Ruzi County of Moscow Province, replacing his father-in-law. On the 3rd of November 1903, daughter Claudia was born to the Kazantsevs. On the 19th of November 1905, daughter Ekaterina. In 1901, son Sava. In 1914, son Nikolai. On the 1st of June 1917, daughter Anna. In 1923, daughter Lyubov. On the 1st of January 1914, Deacon Alexander Kazantsev was ordained a priest to the Church of the Life-Giving Trinity of the Georgievsky Churchyard, replacing Archpriest Vladimir Kurov as a prior. At the Trinity Church, Father Alexander did not serve for long, being appointed to the Church of the Annunciation of Our Lady of the village of Blagoveshchenskaya of Volokоламsk County of Moscow region in February 1916. Here, the priest faced the revolution, being deprived of voting rights after it as a clergyman. Before 1917, the clergyman had a house with a yard, a barn, a horse, 2 cows, 2 hectares of church land and 24 hectares of forest. By 1929, in the column of property, all the same was mentioned, but there was 6.5 hectares of land. During the Soviet regime, Father Alexander was ordained an archpriest. In January 1930, Archpriest Alexander Kazantsev was arrested according to the 74th article, Part 2 of the Criminal Code of Russia, and sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment. The property of the priest was confiscated. From the 18th of February to the 21st of September the same year, the clergyman served his sentence in Sokolniki department of the 1st Factorial Labor Colony, working in the plant and in the laundry, being released afterwards. Later, Father Alexander began to serve at the Church of the Demission of Virgin Mary of the village of Anufrieva of Novopetrovsky district of Moscow region. On the 16th of February 1937, during the wave of mass persecution of clergy that had never been before, Archpriest Alexander Kazantsev was arrested by the NKVD department of Novopetrovsky district of Moscow region, according to the group case with 4 more people involved. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, all the arrested were criminally liable for being the participants of a counter-revolutionary group, as well as having anti-Soviet talks among their fellow villagers and being alien towards the current regime. During the first interrogation, Father Alexander pleaded guilty in the indictment declaring, Being dissatisfied with the tax policy of the Soviet authorities, I expressed my alien attitude towards it among people I trust. Then, having counter-revolutionary point of view, I became one of the active members of the group of anti-Soviet elements of the village of Anufrieva. During the following interrogation, Archpriest Alexander Kazantsev testified, "I do not deny the fact that personally agitated in a counter-revolutionary way among the faithful in particular and among the population in general. I preached during big church holidays, for example the icon of Our Lady of Kazan. The sermons were written by me and were anti-Soviet. In total, 4 of my sermons were confiscated. There it was declared, 'You are exhausted, you need to unite in such hard time,' and so on. In another sermon I preached, 'There is only deception everywhere.' Father Alexander added, 'Among the participants of the counter-revolutionary group, I mainly expressed my anti-Soviet views on the wrong tax policy of the Soviet authorities. It really oppresses all the population, especially us, as we have to pay 3 taxes.' At first, the priest also pointed out that he was encouraged to the agitation by Michael Andreevich Begluk, who was arrested with him. Due to serious difference in the testimony of the accused people, on the 18th of March, the confrontation between Father Alexander and Michael Begluk took place. The priest testified, Michael Andreevich Begluk was not the main organizer of the counter-revolutionary group in the village of Anufrieva. So, as Begluk Michael Andreevich, I was also the organizer. Both of us have the same dissatisfaction towards the current regime since 1934. Both of us, united by our dissatisfaction, had close connection with people who also were dissatisfied with the current regime. We met by one at my place in the church gatehouse or at the post office. Michael Andreevich confirmed the words of the priest. On the 14th of May 1937, by the decree of the special meeting of the NKVD for counter-revolutionary agitation, according to the 58th article, paragraphs 10 and 11 of the Criminal Code of Russia, all of the indicted were sentenced to 5 years of labor camps. On the 20th of May the same year, Archpriest Alexander Kazantsev was exiled to Ukht-Pechlag of the town of Vorkuta. The further fate of the clergyman is unknown. Soon, the Domitian church in the village of Anufrieva was closed, while in autumn 1941 it was blown up.
Ivan Ivanovich Karepin was born on the 1st of January 1890 in the village of Kotelnoye of Nikolsk County, Vologda province, to the family of peasant Ivan Vasilyev and his wife Praskovia Andreevna. It is known that Ivan finished a village school, while, according to the materials of the archive investigation case, he also had spiritual education. Until 1914, Ivan Karepin worked in a synodic printing house and had no exact place of living, traveling across the country and distributing religious books all around Russia. From 1914 to 1919, Ivan Ivanovich lived in the village of Vorontsova Alexandrovskaya of Stavropol province, and together with a peasant had a farm and made pots. Those years, Ivan Ivanovich married maiden Evdokia Ivanovna. In 1919, in the Caucasus area, Ivan Karepin organized an agricultural artel Primer, being its chairman for 2 years. He organized the work in the artel like in a religious community. In 1921, he left the artel because local authorities considered it as a religious community, starting to set up new arrangements that were alien to his religious beliefs. For example, they offered to sing international where the existence of God was denied. Ivan Ivanovich Karepin with his wife moved to Moscow. Ivan Karepin began his confessional cross-bearing during post-revolutionary times of trouble, widespread persecutions of the Orthodox Church and faith, the decay of religious traditions as well as church stratification. According to his own words, in 1921-1922, Ivan Ivanovich Karepin was prepared for the priesthood by Archpriest Kedrov. Those years Ivan Ivanovich served as a psalmist at the Church of the Resurrection of Christ in Sokolniki in Moscow. On the 20th of April 1922, by Patriarch Tikhon, Ivan Karepin was ordained a deacon to the Church of the Resurrection of Christ in Sokolniki. Already on the 17th of June the same year, at the Cathedral of Holy Wisdom in the town of Novgorod, Deacon Ivan was ordained a priest by Bishop Seraphim. There, Father Ivan served for about a year. According to the clergy register of 1924, from the 10th of March to the 13th of August 1923, priest Ivan Karepin was with no place of service. In August 1923, Father Ivan was appointed to the Resurrection Church as a supernumerary priest, replacing their future Holy Mother Nil Smirnov. When the prior of the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary of the Kremichesky churchyard, priest Fyodor Voznesensky, had serious arguments with the faithful, Father Nil Smirnov, who served at the nearby village of Kartino, recommended the parishioners priest Ivan Karepin. On the 28th of April 1924, being asked by the faithful, the priest of the Moscow Resurrection Church in Sokolniki, Ivan Karepin, served divine liturgy at the Intercession Church, preaching during it. The zealous service of Father Ivan, as well as his delectable life words, made the most pleasant impression on the local faithful. Already on the following day, the Church Council sent a petition to Boris, the Bishop of Mozhaisk, asking him to bless Father Ivan to serve the Church of God at the Intercession Church. It was written about priest Ivan. Only such priests, by their service and pastoral talks, are able to satisfy spiritual needs of the faithful, especially of our parish, that suffered greatly during the time of priest of the Life Church. On the 19th of May 1924, the priest was awarded with both a waistcloth and a violet kufiyar, while on the following day, by the resolution of Bishop Boris, Father Ivan was appointed to the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary of Kremichesky churchyard. Here, the priest served for the next 7 years. According to his own words, Father Ivan Karepin was highly respected by the population of the nearby villages, being considered as a populist because he helped the poor. After one such occasion, some people said about the priest, "This is the true communist." During the interrogation, Father Ivan said, "Poor female peasant Pelageya Krylova had not believed in God and had not liked clergymen before she met me. Then she began to believe in God and consider me as a populist. Peasants come to my place as I invite them, while my wife treats them well. One day 2 shepherds passed me, saying about me, 'This is a good priest, there is no reason to exile him to Solovki.' However, in the end of February 1931, somebody denounced the priest. In the reference of the Morva Village Council, it was mentioned that citizen Karepin, being the priest of the Intercession Church, systematically agitates against all the events of the Soviet authorities among peasants, especially women. In February 1931, he organized an illegal meeting where anti-Soviet issues were discussed. Four-handed farmers of the nearby villages took part in that meeting. During his sermons, he agitated against entering the kolkhoz. In general, Karepin Ivan Ivanovich has anti-Soviet point of view. On the 10th of March 1931, priest Ivan Karepin was arrested by the UGPU for anti-Soviet activity, being imprisoned in the town of Ruza. At the moment of the arrest, his family consisted of his wife Yevdokia Ivanovna and 5 children from the age of 3 months old to the age of 6 years old. Also, Father Ivan pointed out that a cousin of his wife, Yelena Akimovna Kompaneytseva, aged 27, lived with them working for food and clothes. In the column of property, it was written that the priest had 1 cow, 2,700 square meters of land, and 5 beehives. According to the reference from the village council of Moriva, the priest also had a house with a yard. In the materials of the case, it was mentioned. In the nearby villages of Kremichesky churchyard, the meetings dedicated to political and agricultural issues were disrupted. The reason was the systematic anti-Soviet activity of Pope Karepin. Meanwhile, to win respect of the poor, Karepin helped them around the household. Witnesses testified. Priest Karepin is highly respected among the population, especially among women. In his sermons, he says, Soon the authorities will be changed. It will be easier to live, but we need not to forget God. Among peasants, Pope Karepin distributes anti-Soviet literature Does Christ Exist?, where grain reserves in the Ukraine are described. During his sermons, Karepin preaches pretending if he had dreams like the revelation from heavens. Thanks to that, he is considered like a prophet. During the interrogation, Father Ivan testified, "I feel sorry for the collectivization, but only for the free will one. On this point I preached at the church, for example in spring 1930. You, citizens, entered the kolkhoz. This does not contradict the gospel, but no finger must be raised to close the church." Then I read the 2nd and the 4th chapter of the Acts of Apostles. I also had to speak about collectivization with peasants in private talks. It was in the same way as in the sermons, I mean from the point of view of religious and social life. Answering the question about the book Does Christ Exist?, Priest Ion Karepin said, "I did not have the book Does Christ Exist?, but wanted to find it very much. Indeed, I talked with some peasants about this book." Father Ivan did not plead guilty in the anti-Soviet agitation among the population. On the 27th of March 1931, the case was sent to the OGPU Troika to review. Priest Ion Karepin was accused of systematic anti-Soviet agitation against all events of the Soviet authorities, of using faithful women for anti-Soviet agitation and vilification of the events of the Soviet authorities, as well as distributing anti-Soviet literature and preaching in the anti-Soviet way from the church ambo. This way the Pope disrupts political and agricultural campaigns. According to the materials of the group case of Abbess Tamara Likharova, the priest had a close connection with nun Alexandra Mikheeva, who also was arrested and repressed later. On the 1st of April the same year, according to the 58th article paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, by the OGPU Troika of Moscow region, the clergyman was sentenced to 5 years of concentration camps. When the term of his imprisonment ended, Father Ivan was forbidden to live in big cities and had to move to the town of Glazov of Udmurtia Republic, where at first he worked as a watch at the Cathedral of the Transfiguration of Christ. During mass persecution of the Orthodoxy, on the 18th of December 1937, the clergyman and his wife Evdokia Ivanovna were arrested by the NKVD. The interrogation was rather short. Already on the 27th of December, Priest Ion Karepin was sentenced to 10 years of labor camps, while Mother Evdokia to 8. The further fate of Priest Ion Karepin and his wife is unknown. Robert Valentin, or Vasily Ivanovich Kulikov, was born in 1879 in a village of Nashokino of Kirsanovo County of Tambov Province to a peasant's family. It is known that at least there was one more son in their family. They had a house with a yard, a barn, a cow, a horse, 3 sheep, and some cattle. Vasily Ivanovich got primary education at a parish school. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, nearly 1899, after the death of his parents, Vasily Kulikov was accepted as an obedient to the monastery of the Transfiguration of Christ of the town of Saratov. On the 21st of August 1909, Vasily Ivanovich was accepted to Alexander Svirsky Monastery of the Life-Giving Trinity in Donetsk province, while already on the 10th of November the same year he was listed as an obedient. On the 15th of April the following year, novice Vasily Kulikov took monastic vows with name Valentin, and on the 15th of July the same year was ordained a hierodeacon. According to the service record of the Brethren, Father Valentin served both during the liturgies and in the choir. On the 1st of August 1910, the clergyman was sent to the town church of the monastery in the town of Petrograd, where he served for the next 4 years at the church of St. Alexander Nevsky. On the 21st of February 1913, Hierodeacon Valentin Kulikov was awarded with a bronze medal and a memorial sign in honor of the 300th anniversary of the reign of Romanov house. On the 29th of September, In 1914, Father Valentin was sent back from the town church to the monastery. On the 2nd of March 1915, Hierodeacon Valentin Kulikov was accepted to the Brethren of Andronikov Monastery of the Savior in Moscow. As a superior of the monastery, Bishop Vladimir Sokolovsky pointed out, Father Valentin was able to lead a kind life of a monk. These words pathetically passed through the whole life of the clergyman. Revolutionary events dramatically changed life in Russia. By the beginning of 1918, in Andronikov Monastery of the Savior lived 17 monks and obedient. On the 12th of October 1918, by Moscow Diocese, Hierodeacon of Andronikov Monastery of the Savior Valentin was granted a leave to Tambov province for 1 year. Upon his return, Father Valentin was appointed a deacon to the Church of St. Marys, Adrian and Natalia in Moscow. By that time, Andronikov Monastery of the Savior was closed by Soviet authorities. The territory of the monastery was occupied by the All-Russian Extraordinary Commission that made the devastated and profiled monastery one of the first concentration camps for political opponents. The expelled monks had to roam searching for a place to serve and to earn money. In 1920, Hierodeacon Valentin Kulikov was ordained a hero monk, being appointed as a caretaker priest to the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of Kazan in the village of Parechia of Ruza County of Moscow Province. On the 20th of July the same year, by the resolution of Bishop Kerman, hero monk Valentin was appointed to bear pastoral duties at the Church of Saint Apostles Peter and Paul in the village of Petrovskaya of Ruza County, under the guidance of local priest Father Delektorsky. Hero monk Valentin served at the Church of Saint Apostles Peter and Paul for a short time, and in 1921 or 1922 was appointed to the Church of Saint Nicholas the Miracle Maker in the village of Nikolskaya Dolgorukova of Ruza County of Moscow Province. According to the lists of clergymen of Možajsko-Vica district in 1923-1925, the clergyman was mentioned as the prior of the church. Here, hero monk Valentin served until the middle of 1930s. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, from 1924 or 1925, the clergyman had a cow that later was probably confiscated, in addition to the deprivation of voting rights. Along with Father Valentin, his cousin Serafima Sergeyevna Smirnova also came to Nikolskaya. She was called a cohabitant or a wife in the interrogation records of mudslingers, but according to the arrested clergyman and his questionnaire, Serafima Smirnova lived on dependence on him. After the private petition of Bishop Innocent by Christmas of 1928, hero monk Valentin Kulikov was awarded with a Golden Pectoral Cross. By 1935, hero monk Valentin was ordained an abbot. It is known that Father Valentin served public prayers and organized cross processions in nearby villages without any commission or village council. That was the reason of his arrests in 1933, when the clergyman was imprisoned for 20 days, and in 1934, when he was released a day later. On the 20th of May 1935, the chairman of Nikolskaya Village Council denounced to the local NKVD department, pointing out that during the revision of property of the Church of St. Nicholas, Pope Valentin raised the alarm in the villages, while his cohabitants through her messages warned people that the church was about to be closed. As a result, during the revision, at least 50 or 60 people from nearby villages gathered and broke in the church, being very het up. In connection with this, the chairman of the village council asked the NKVD department to find out the reasons of the accident, as well as to expel cohabitant Serafima along with Pope Valentin, adding that those days people were seriously preparing for the holiday of Saint Nicholas, that would be on the 22nd of May, so measures should be taken, otherwise on the 22nd of May there would be a service. It was natural that the denounce led to the measures. After questioning witnesses on the 27th of June 1935, the officer of the 2nd Department of the Main Department of the NKVD of Moscow region ordered to have law on Abbot Valentin, according to the 58th article, paragraphs 10 and 11 of the Criminal Code of Russia. According to the application of a measure of restraint, the clergyman was proved to be guilty in active provocative anti-Soviet agitation among the population aimed at a disruption of collective farms, declaring, "Soviet authorities are the persecution of Christ, while collective farms are alien for the Church of God." Also, he gossiped about the soon war and the fall of Soviet regime, declaring, "Soon there will be a war, as Soviet regime is groggy. It will fall and the Tsar will reign. There will be no collective farms, and everyone will cede his own land." On the 2nd of July 1935, listed as a priest of St. Nicholas Church, Abbot Valentin Kulikov was arrested by the NKVD department of Ruza district of Moscow region, along with a group of peasants. 8 people from the age of 25 to the age of 72 were involved in the case, being arrested between the 29th of June and the 2nd of July, and accused in counter-revolutionary agitation and threat to kolkhoz activists. After the arrest, Father Valentin, the sexton of the Church of St. Nicholas, Vasily Lobkovsky, as well as peasants Matrona Fedulova, Nikolai Yemshikov, and Nikolai Vinogradov, were imprisoned in Mozhaisk, while Efrosina Danilova, Ivan Orlov, and Alexei Gusev were on their own recognizance. At the time of the arrest, the clergyman had no property. The indicted were accused in anti-Soviet agitation among the individual peasants against entering a kolkhoz, threatening people with provocative gossips about the soon fall of the Soviet authorities, using religious superstitions. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, Abbot Valentin also said, "There are very few people in the church. The faithful stopped going to church at all." In the indictment it was pointed out that Abbot Valentin Kulikov was also accused in having an anti-Soviet point of view. He agitated in the anti-Soviet way against kolkhoz building, organizing the disruption of the elections of the candidates from the village active to the Supreme Soviet in 1934, totally ignoring his duties before the state, by his actions corrupting individual peasants. During the interrogations, the clergyman did not plead guilty, but his guilt was proved by the words of the witnesses during the confrontation. On the 19th of September 1935, after reviewing the case number 6315, the acting deputy of Moscow Regional Prosecutor decided that the guilt of the accused was proved according to the 58th article, paragraph 10. On the 26th of December 1935, according to the 58th article, paragraph 10, part 1 of the Criminal Code of Russia, a special colleague of Moscow Regional Court sentenced the 56-year-old Abbot Valentin Kulikov to 5 years of labor camps. On the 17th of March the following year, by the Special Committee of the Supreme Court of the USSR, the sentence was affirmed. The further fate of Abbot Valentin Kulikov is still unknown. Alexei Nikolaevich Lvov was born in February 1859 in the village of Mikhailovskaya of Ruza County of Moscow Province to the family of a deacon of the Church of Michael the Archangel Nikolai Vasilievich Lvov. In the family there was at least one more son, Alexander. In 1881, Alexei Nikolaevich graduated from the 6th class of Bethany Spiritual Seminary on the 2nd class, married and was ordained a priest to the Church of the Ascension of Christ of the village of Takhovo of Klin County of Moscow Province. On the 1st of September 1885, son Sergei was born to the family of Father Alexei, while in 1901, daughter Alexandra was born. Also in the family of the Lvovs, daughter Anna was born. On the 6th of May 1905, the priest was ordained an archpriest, while on the 6th of May 1910 he was awarded with the Pectoral Cross. At least from 1907 to 1914, Archpriest Alexei Lvov was the deanery of Klin County. Father Alexei served as a prior of the Ascension Church until April 1913, then being appointed to the Church of the Ascension of Christ in the village of Terayvo-Sloboda of Klin County of Moscow Province. On the 6th of May 1914, the prior of the church in the village of Terayvo-Sloboda of Klin County, Archpriest Alexei Lvov, was awarded with the Order of St. Anna of the 3rd class. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, before the revolution the priest had a house 112 square meters in size, a shed, a barn, 16 hectares of land, a horse and 2 cows, while after the revolution all these was confiscated, while he earned a living himself. Father Alexei was deprived of voting rights as a clergyman. In the night of the 21st and 22nd of February 1931, in the village a fire occurred. A kolkhoz barn with hay was burned. There a kolkhoz chancellery was also placed. The same day, a local militiaman sent a telegram to the head of militia of Volokholamsk district. There it was written: all of the documents of the chancellery were burned. The barn with hay was burned completely. 13 people were arrested according to this case. On the 22nd of February 1931, among the arrested on suspicious of an arson, there were priests of the Ascension Church, Alexei Lvov, who was already 72 at that time, Nikolai Steblev, Hierodeacon Innocent Mazurin, a church watchman, and some peasants. When the arrested were transported to the prison of the town of Volokholamsk, almost 200 locals came to see them off. They were not satisfied with the arrests and with the fact that the church would be left with no priests. By the time of the arrest, in the family of Archpriest Alexei there was son Sergei Lvov, also a priest, daughter Alexandra Bogatyryova, who worked as a teacher, daughter Anna Sosnovchikova, who was a peasant of the village of Chash of Volokholamsk district. Both collective farmers and the head of the kolkhoz demanded severe measures of punishment towards people who were trying to disturb the building of socialism. The following days, local mass media organized the propaganda, and one by one rampant articles were published. There it was written: collective meeting asks the revolutionary proletarian court to punish the causes of the arson severely and to make the process a show trial. Being aware of the innocence of the clergymen and peasants of the arson, the OGPU officers released the majority of the laity and began to question the 4 convicted that were still kept in custody. But no question connected to the arson was asked, and the arrested were accused in anti-Soviet activity. The priests and the hierodeacon did not hide their views on the things that were happening, but no one of them considered their opinion as something criminal. Archpriest Alexei Lvov confirmed that indeed many people abandoned the church. In his opinion, the only way of their enlightenment was clearly sold liturgies, as well as preachers, but many people abandoned the church because they were afraid of losing their jobs. During the interrogations, Father Alexei also said that poor peasants were bad workers, and many of them were lazy, so if people organized collective farms from workers like them, collective farms would not be able to exist. Separate farms would be more useful and beneficial. During the interrogation, the 72-year-old priest was not afraid of expressing his opinion on the subject of the actions of the Soviet authorities towards the church. I think that people often do not believe in Christ because they want to keep their place of service. By making anti-religious reports, Soviet authorities disrupt and weaken faith in God. But priests answer in the same way: the liturgies, accurate preaching in churches. And I declare that the local representatives of the Soviet authorities persecute the church. I also preach during the services that Christ and his apostles suffered for us, and we need to overcome all these mundane hardships and suffer. As none of the arrested was connected to the arson, the case was submitted to the OGPU. The arrested were accused in anti-Soviet agitation, basing on the testimony of a psalmist, a church watchman, the head of a collective farm, and one of the collective farmers. The case of the arson was completely forgotten, while no one knew if the arrested were guilty in it indeed. They were accused in the fact that no people entered the kolkhoz, while those who had already entered were working badly. The clergymen were accused in anti-Soviet activity against all the events of the Soviet authorities and the party. For example, on the topic of tax policy, Pope Lvov said, "Taxes are beyond our strength. we have nowhere to take from. The authorities do it because they want to close churches, so the church is being despoiled and plundered in order to kill the faith in God. On the 11th of April 1931, in the indictment there was no hint on any arson. The case was made basing on the information that had been given to the Volokholamsk OGPU department of Moscow region, that in the village of Streletsskaya Sloboda of Volokholamsk district of Moscow region, clergymen powerfully and systematically agitate in the anti-Soviet way, trying to disrupt the events of the Soviet authorities and the party in the village, using meetings of the religious part of the locals in the church. With no stopping both inside the church and outside it, individually and in groups, the clergymen along the anti-Soviet elements of the village influenced on and directed people to disrupt the events of the Soviet authorities in the village, creating through them anti-Soviet mood against social and political campaigns in the village. This group concentrated their powers in the house of the head Pope Lvov Alexei, who was regularly visited by Pope Steblev Nikolai, Deacon Mazurin Innocent, and former trader Puzanov Ivan. The house became the center of all anti-Soviet activity of the group. By interrogation of the witnesses it was confirmed that Pope Lvov Alexei in his preaches regularly pointed out his discontent with the Soviet authorities and the party, their persecution of the religion and Christianity, persuading Christians to hate communists, antichrists, their enemies. For example, "People, the time of Antichrist has come. Both the Orthodox Church and we, the Christians, are being persecuted. Remember the sufferings of Christ and Saint Apostles, who accepted their martyrdom. Christ bore and commanded us to do the same. Let's love each other and hate our enemies who persecute the Orthodox faith." On the 28th of June 1931, according to the 58th article, paragraphs 10 and 11, being accused in anti-Soviet agitation, Archpriest Alexei Lvov was sentenced to 3 years of exile to Kazakhstan by the OGPU Troika of Moscow region. Both priest Nikolai Steblev and hero Deacon Innocent Mazurin were sentenced to 3 years of exile to a labor camp, while peasant Ivan Puzanov to 5 years of exile to Kazakhstan. The further life of Archpriest Alexei Nikolaevich Lvov is unknown. Probably the elderly priest passed away in a labor camp in Kazakhstan. In the indictment there were the words from a sermon of Father Alexei: "Christ suffered for us, so we must suffer for the name of Christ, defending the Orthodox faith. We are the flock of a shepherd that will not be scattered, but will be together and will be stronger."
Dmitry Vladimirovich Maslov was born on the 6th of October 1867 in the town of Veria of Moscow province to the family of sexton of the Church of Elijah the Prophet, Vladimir Yegorov Maslov, and his wife Alexandra Yegorovna. In 1881, Dmitry Vladimirovich finished the County College of Veria and already since the 12th of November 1882 was appointed a teacher at the village school of Krymskaya of Ruza County of Moscow region. Since the 1st of September 1888, Dmitry Maslov was transferred to the primary college of the village of Dudkovo of Veria County. In September 1890, Dmitry Vladimirovich was ordained a deacon to the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker of the village of Nikolskaya Klyapova of Zvenigorod County, replacing Deacon Peter Vinogradov. Those years, Father Dmitry married maiden Agrippina Petrovna. Sons Pavel, George, and Vladimir were born to the Maslovs. In the column of punishments it was written that according to the decree of Moscow Spiritual Consistory dated the 6th of June 1900, for drinking alcohol, Father Dmitry was banned to serve, later being reduced to the rank of a psalmist, until the improvement of his behavior. In 1901, Deacon Dmitry Maslov was appointed a psalmist to the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary in the town of Ruza. According to the decree of Moscow Spiritual Consistory, dated the 27th of April 1904, Father Dmitry was allowed to appeal for the position of a deacon. In the clergy register of 1916, it was pointed out that Deacon Dmitry Maslov, who served as a psalmist, was of very good behavior. After the revolution, Deacon Dmitry Maslov was ordained a priest. As in the list of the clergymen of Mozhaisk Vicodiocese in 1923-1925, Father Dmitry was already mentioned as the prior of the Church of Three Saints of the village of Volynchino-Polektovo of Ruzy County of Moscow Province. On the 13th of December 1932, the 65-year-old priest of the Church of Three Saints, who lived in the village of Voskresenki, was arrested by the OGPU. Already on the 9th of January 1933, according to the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the OGPU Troika of Moscow region sentenced elderly Father Dmitry to 3 years of exile to Kazakhstan. The further fate of the clergyman is unknown. On the 10th of May 1996, priest Dmitry Vladimirovich Maslov was rehabilitated by the prosecutor's office of Moscow. Nikolai Alexandrovich Mirolyubov was born on the 4th of May 1883 in the village of Staraya Ruza of Ruzy County of Moscow Province, to the family of priest of the Church of the Nativity of Virgin Mary, Alexander Yakovlev Mirolyubov, and his wife Alexandra Nikolaeva. The newborn was baptized 3 days later by his grandfather, the prior of the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of Kazan, priest Yakov Mirolyubov, who also became the godfather of his grandson. Nikolai Mirolyubov finished two-class ministry college and worked as a teacher, married, and was ordained a priest. In 1919, Father Nikolai was under trial, being sentenced to 2 weeks of forced labor. In 1923, priest Nikolai Mirolyubov was appointed to the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary in the village of Bratsovo of Moscow County of Moscow Province. On the 19th of October 1929, after a denounce, priest of the Intercession Church Nikolai Mirolyubov was arrested according to the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia by the OGPU agent of Shodnaya district of Moscow region. By the moment of the arrest, the widowed clergyman lived on dependence of the community in block of flats number 26. The 46-year-old priest Nikolai Mirolyubov was accused of the following statements. The clergymen are attacked. They are not given any bread. Soviet authorities choke peasants with taxes, oppressing them everywhere, and lead them to devastation. Peasants cannot develop during the Soviet regime. On the 14th of October 1929, visiting people's houses, the clergyman told peasants, Soviet authorities rob peasants by means of taxes. People lived better under Tsar. Bolsheviks persecute the church, forgetting God. During sitting campaign of 1926-1929, Mirolyubov, visiting houses of the faithful, said, Bolsheviks take bread away, giving nothing to peasants. No bread should be given to Bolsheviks, as these antichrists are against God. In the decree of bringing to justice, it was mentioned that citizen Mirolyubov Nikolai Alexandrovich, being the priest of the village of Bratsovo of Shodnaya district, uses his authority among the faithful, and both in preachers and private talks, maliciously agitated in anti-Soviet way. In autumn 1928, he agitated against taxes, saying that Soviet authorities rob peasants with taxes. Then Soviet authorities will go to looting. When books where taken products were issued, Mirolyubov gossiped about the upcoming famine. Being questioned as the indicted on the 2nd of November 1929, priest Nikolai Mirolyubov testified that he never and nowhere agitated in anti-Soviet way, being quite loyal towards Soviet authorities. On the 10th of November 1929, the case was sent to the special meeting of the OGPU to review in the non-judicial order. In the indictment, it was pointed out that the priest daily during private talks among peasants, mainly women, maliciously agitated in anti-Soviet way, aiming at the disruption of the power of the Soviet authorities and the party, in the eyes of the latter. On the 23rd of November 1929, by the special meeting of the OGPU, priest Nikolai Alexandrovich Mirolyubov was sentenced to 3 years of concentration camps. The further life of the clergyman is unknown. Soon after the prior of the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary in the village of Bratsova was arrested, it was closed.
Ivan Alexeyevich Muzev was born on the 2nd of January 1875 in the village of Yurkino of Ruza County of Moscow Province to the family of sexton of the Church of the Nativity of Christ Alexey Fedorov Muzev and his wife Praskovia Yefimova. The newborn was baptized the following day by the prior of a local church Vasily Solkovsky, who also became his godfather. It is known that in the family there was also daughter Maria. Ivan followed his father's footsteps, finishing Zvenigorod Spiritual College on the 2nd class in 1888 and graduating from Bethany Spiritual Seminary on the 1st class in 1895. Then he married Maiden Agrippina, the daughter of priest of the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker Peter Delitsyn, and in April 1896 was ordained a priest to the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary in the village of Pokrovskoye Bunyakovo of Bronice County. In the beginning of January 1897, Father Ivan was appointed to the Church of the Life-Giving Trinity of the village of Golocholovo of Kolomna County of Moscow Province, replacing its prior priest Ignatiy Vostokov, who had passed away. At the same time, the young priest was appointed a chairman of a local parish school, while from 1904 he also taught the law of God at Laptevo Zemstvo School. On the 7th of May 1897, son Alexander was born to the Muzovs, while on the 9th of May 1898, son Arseny. Later, daughter Vera was born to their family. Even in the end of the 19th century, the citizens of the village of Golocholovo were mostly old believers. When priest Jan Muzov was appointed there, he had no place to live, and the new prior had to rent a room in the house of one influential old believer. But soon, after some talks with Father Ivan, the wife of that old believer began to attend the Trinity Church. Priest Ivan Muzov continued his painstaking work in order to convert local old believers to the Orthodoxy. All of them had been baptized at an Orthodox church, but later were grown up in the misbelief of the religious split. But sermons from the church ambo, as well as monitorial talks, started to bear their fruit. Many old believers began to attend services and take part in cross processions. Only from 1897 to 1911, Father Ivan helped to experience the Orthodoxy 13 priestless old believers. From 1900, the priest constantly had talks with people writing a diary. Moreover, Father Ivan cured his parishioners with homeopathy, being highly respected for this by people. On the 4th of May 1903, the priest was awarded with a waistcloth, in 1907 with a skufia, in 1911 with a kamelavka. In 1906 and 1909, Father Ivan was also awarded with a gratitude charter of the College Council, while in 1910 with a medal in honor of the 25th anniversary of parish schools. Later, the priest not once was awarded for his vicarial efforts in the educational sphere. In 1910, Father Ivan became a deputy of the Diocese Council, while in late 1920s was appointed a rural dean of Malino district, replacing priest Eugen Streltsov. In 1930, the Trinity Church was heavily taxed. The authorities said that the parish would not manage to collect the money, while they would use the situation to close the church. Father Ivan clearly understood this, and in the holiday of Epiphany of God, appealed to parishioners to help to pay the taxes, as the future of both the church and the parish depended on it. The parishioners collected the money that was needed, and all the taxes were paid in time. However, for such an activity, the rural dean was heavily oppressed by the authorities that had been seeking for a reason to eliminate a zealous priest. On the 5th of February 1930, for the counteraction of the campaign of closure of the church, its prior priest Ivan Muzov was arrested by the OGPU department of Malino district of Moscow region. The priest was accused in using the feelings of the faithful against anti-religious propaganda that led to a meeting of the faithful under his guidance, where it was decided to collect money to pay the taxes as a sign of the protest of closure of the church. Already on the 30th of April the same year, the OGPU Troika of Moscow region, according to the 58th article paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, sentenced 55-year-old priest Ion Muzov to an exile to the Northern Territory for 3 years. After his arrest, the priest did not return to his place of service, while his further fate is unknown. Alexei Sergeyevich Naumov was born on the 12th of February 1892 in the town of Penza to the family of a psalmist. Later, one more son, Nikolai, was born to the family of Sergei Naumov. Soon after finishing Penza Spiritual College in 1907, Alexei Sergeyevich married maiden Maria Sergeyevna and was firstly ordained a deacon and then a priest. From October 1916 to June 1917, Alexei Naumov was on military duty. In 1916, son Victor was born to the priest's family. In 1918, son Vladimir, while in 1924, son Sergei. By 1920, Father Alexei served at one of the churches of the town of Saransk of Penza province. The same year, the priest was arrested by the OGPU, being accused in disorganization of collective farms, and spent 12 days in prison, being released afterwards. Later, Father Alexei served at one of the churches of the town of Kuznetsk of Sredny Volsky region. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, the priest was of Tikhon orientation. In 1930, priest Alexei Naumov was arrested, being accused in the participation in a counter-revolutionary organization of clergymen and in keeping silver coins. The priest was sentenced to 3 years of exile away from Sredny Volsky region. When the term of his imprisonment ended, in the end of June 1932, the priest came to the town of Ruza, where in 1922 moved his brother, Deacon Nikolai Naumov, who served at the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary. Father Alexei began to serve at the Church of the Michael the Archangel in the village of Mikhailovskaya of Ruza district. According to the protocols of the interrogation, by that time Father Nikolai had 3 children from the age of 8 to the age of 16. On the 8th of February 1933, priest Alexei Naumov was arrested, being accused in participation in a counter-revolutionary organization of clergy in order to overthrow Soviet authorities. The indictment of Father Alexei was rather standard for that time: anti-kolkhoz agitation, dissatisfaction with the Soviet authorities, and overtaxing. However, there were some differences. In the counter-revolutionary organization named the Den of a Wolf, led by the prior of the Church of Great Martyr Demetrius of Thessalonica, Archpriest Ion Nekrasov, apart from priest Alexei Naumov, there was also his brother, deacon of the Intercession Church Nikolai Naumov, as well as preposter of the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary, Mikhailov Vasily Mikhailovich, and active parishioners of the Churches of the Intercession of Virgin Mary and Great Martyr Demetrius of Thessalonica. Possibly, they were the people who, under the leadership of Father Ion, prevented the churches from being closed, so the authorities decided to eliminate them physically. In the indictment it was written, aiming to attract people to their counter-revolutionary group, they helped some faithful financially, gathering in the flats of Deacon Naumov as well as of Selenina and Karenova, where they had anti-Soviet talks. They collected signatures against closing of the cathedral of the town of Ruza. On the 21st of September, on the holiday of the Nativity of Virgin Mary, priest Nekrasov and Deacon Naumov went across the village performing a public prayer and agitating against collective farms. Father Alexei, like other accused people, behaved courageously during the interrogation, defending his religious beliefs. The evidence of that fact is the protocol of interrogation. On the 22nd of April 1933, according to the 58th article, paragraphs 10 and 11 of the Criminal Code of Russia, Father Alexei was sentenced by the OGPU Troika of Moscow region. Like Archpriest Ion Nekrasov, Naumov brothers were exiled for 3 years but served their sentence in Bel-Baltlak labor camp, while the prior of the Church of St. Demetrius was exiled to the OGPU Karlak labor camp of the town of Karaganda. On the 26th of October 1935, priest Alexei Naumov was released and came to the village of Purshevo of Mozhaisk district of Moscow region, while since October 1936 the priest began to serve at the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary in the village of Milatino of the same district. According to the reference given by the village council of Milatino, upon his arrival at the village of Milatino, Naumov organized and inspired a group of clergymen, individual peasants, who were hostile to events of the Soviet authorities, gathering secret meetings, collecting money among the faithful and collecting signatures to the unknown text. He corrupted collective farmers, inviting them to secret meetings. In the beginning of 1937, the elder son of the priest was exiled to a labor camp, while on the 17th of September 1937, Father Alexei Naumov was arrested with Mila Konstantin Yastrepkov. The priest was accused in counter-revolutionary agitation, as well as in appealing to vote against communists during the elections. At the time of the arrest, the family of the priest included his wife, Maria Sergeyevna, 45 years old, and son Sergei, 13 years old. From the interrogation records. During the investigation, it was found out that I explained some parts of the Constitution in the counter-revolutionary way, didn't you? I denied, as I did not explain any parts of the Constitution in the counter-revolutionary way, but I explained that according to the new Constitution, and people are allowed to practice their religion, and nobody has the right to forbid you to believe. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, no confrontation of the indicted and witnesses was organized. In addition, no real evidence of the guilt of the indicted was found. Meanwhile, on the 10th of October 1937, according to the 58th article, paragraphs 10 and 11 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the NKVD Troika of Moscow region sentenced priest Alexei Naumov to 10 years of imprisonment in a labor camp. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, under the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, on the 15th of February 1939, Father Alexei Naumov, who served his sentence in Volgolak labor camp for some crime, was judged by Yaroslavl Regional Court. The priest appealed a complaint, but it was declared to be unreasonable. The further fate of priest Alexei Naumov is still unknown. Nikolai Sergeyevich Naumov was born on the 11th of April 1895 in the village of Prokhozna of Moshansk County of Penza Province to the family of a psalmist. In the family there was at least one son, Alexei. According to the questionnaire of the arrested, before February 1917, Nikolai Naumov worked in a bakery of the town of Penza and studied, while after served in the army as a record clerk and worked at a factory of the town of Penza. After finishing a college, Nikolai Sergeyevich married maiden Antonina, the daughter of priest Viktor Ivanovich Bogorodetsky, and was ordained a deacon to one of the churches of the town of Kuznetsk of Sredny Volzhsky County of Penza Province. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, the deacon followed Patriarch Tikhon's direction. During the liquidation of middle-class elements in the town of Kuznetsk and Kuznetsk County from January to July 1919, about 200 people were arrested, landowners, former landlords and clergymen. Deacon Nikolai Naumov was among these people, being exiled from Sredny Volzhsky County. In 1922, Deacon Nikolai came to the town of Ruza of Moscow Province, where he began to serve at the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary. In Ruza, the clergyman lived in Krasnaya Street, house 14. According to the protocols of the interrogation, by that time Father Nikolai had 3 children. His wife was sentenced to 10 years of imprisonment for plundering the property of a kolkhoz. In the end of June 1932, the brother of Deacon Nikolai, priest Alexei Naumov, came to the town of Ruza and began to serve at the Church of Michael the Archangel in the village of Mikhailovskaya of Ruza district. On the 8th of February 1933, the brothers were arrested, being accused in participation in a counter-revolutionary organization of clergy in order to overthrow Soviet authorities. The indictment of Father Nikolai was rather standard for that time: anti-kolkhoz agitation, dissatisfaction with the Soviet authorities and overtaxing. However, there were some differences. In the counter-revolutionary organization named the Den of the Wolf, led by the prior of the Church of Great Martyr Demetrius of Thessalonica, Archpriest Ivan Nekrasov, apart from Deacon Nikolai Naumov, there was priest of the Church of Michael the Archangel, Alexei Naumov, as well as prepost of the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary, Mikhailov Vasily Mikhailovich, and active parishioners of the Churches of the Intercession of Virgin Mary and Great Martyr Demetrius of Thessalonica. Possibly they were the people who, under the leadership of Father Ivan, prevented the churches from being closed. so the authorities decided to eliminate him physically. In the indictment it was written, aiming to attract people to their counter-revolutionary group, they helped some faithful financially, gathering in the flats of Deacon Naumov as well as of Selenina and Karenova, where they had anti-Soviet talks. They collected signatures against closing of the cathedral of the town of Ruza. On the 21st of September, on the holiday of the Nativity of Virgin Mary, Priest Nekrasov and Deacon Naumov went across the village performing a public prayer and agitating against collective farms. Father Nikolai, like other accused people, behaved courageously during the interrogation, defending his religious beliefs. The evidence of that fact is the protocol of interrogation. On the 22nd of April 1933, according to the 58th article, paragraphs 10 and 11 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the OGPU Troika of Moscow region sentenced Deacon Nikolai and his brother. Like Archpriest Jan Nekrasov, they were exiled to Kazakhstan for 3 years and served their sentence in OGPU Karlak labor camp of the town of Karaganda. When the term of their imprisonment expired, Deacon Nikolai Naumov returned to his native Penza and began to work as a night watch at the church of St. Mitrofan of Voronezh. His wife, Antonina Viktorovna, got divorced with him and married for the second time. In January 1938, in the most terrible period of persecutions, for the supporting church life of his native exhausted diocese, Archpriest Vladimir Artablevsky returned. He led a communion at the only active church of St. Mitrofan of Voronezh, uniting the survived clergymen. But in the late autumn of 1939, a criminal case against the communion was filed. The clergyman and some parishioners of the church were arrested. On the 6th of November 1939, Deacon Nikolai Naumov, who served as a night watch at a church of St. Mitrofan of Voronezh, was arrested by the NKVD department of the town of Penza. According to the indictment, he was accused for anti-Soviet agitation, revolt and defeatist activity, and for being a member of anti-Soviet group of clergymen. During the investigation, Deacon Nikolai was held in Penza prison number 1. Neither during the interrogations nor during the confrontations the clergyman admitted his guilt in the charges. He said he knew nothing about counter-revolutionary activity or the clergy he was connected to. Moreover, during a confrontation with a person who had slandered him, Father Nikolai called him the betrayer of the church. On the 16th of January 1940, the case of Deacon Nikolai Naumov was reviewed. The indictment, according to the 58th article, paragraph 12 of the Criminal Code of Russia, for not denouncing and hiding the anti-Soviet activity that was known by him and led by Onikov and others in his presence. After the investigation, the indictment, according to the 58th article, paragraph 12 of the Criminal Code of Russia, was not fully proved, but new information accusing Naumov and S. was found. He was accused according to the 73rd article, part 1, paragraph 2 of the Criminal Code of Russia, and the measures of restraint, the imprisonment of Naumov, were decided not to change. The further fate of the clergyman is still unknown. On the 23rd of November 1995, Deacon Nikolai Naumov was rehabilitated by the prosecutor's office of Penza region. The repressive machine not only succeeded during collective arrests, but eliminated clergymen of the church individually, eliminating 2 or 3 at a time. As a result, by the beginning of the Great Patriotic War, there were only several priests and 2 active cemetery churches in Penza region, the Church of St. Mitrofan of Voronezh in Penza, and the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of Kazan in Kuznetsk. And only words of our Lord Jesus Christ open us the mystery how the Russian Orthodox Church could eventually be saved and revive up to its current conditions. I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. Sergei Ivanovich Smorodin was born on the 6th of January 1867 in the church house of Ilyinsky Posad of the town of Mozhaisk of Moscow province to the family of deacon of the Cathedral of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker Ion Smorodin. It is known that in the family there was also son Dmitry. Sergei Ivanovich finished the town school of Mozhaisk, while later Zvenigorod Spiritual College. In 1889, Sergei Smorodin graduated from Moscow Spiritual Seminary on the 2nd class and was appointed a teacher to a parish school at the Church of the Life-Giving Trinity in the village of Yershova. Later, Sergei Ivanovich married maiden Evgenia Nikolaevna and in 1892 was ordained a priest to the Church of Christ the Savior in the village of Paveltsevo of Moscow County of Moscow Province. From 1892 to 1898, Father Sergius was also a teacher of the Law of God of Kotovo-Mysovo Private College. In the beginning of January 1895, according to the order of the diocese, Priest Sergius Smorodin had to be appointed a priest to the Church of the Life-Giving Trinity in the village of Yershova of Zvenigorod County of Moscow Province, but finally, according to the resolution of His Majesty, dated the 20th of January, the priest was left at his current place in Paveltsevo. On the 1st of March 1898, Father Sergius was appointed a priest to the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker in the village of Poltava of Bogorodsk County of Moscow Province, where he served for the following 13 years. In May 1911, Father Sergius was appointed to the Church of Elijah the Prophet at the Stribukov churchyard, where he served for the next 4.5 years. In the beginning of December 1915, Priest Sergius Smorodin was appointed to the Cathedral of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker of his native town of Mozhaisk. But already on the 19th of December the same year, he was appointed to the Church of Elijah the Prophet of Ilinskaya Sloboda of the same county. There he replaced future Holy Martyr Konstantin Nekrasov, who eventually became the prior of the Cathedral of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker. At the Church of Elijah the Prophet, the priest faced the revolution and served for the following 17 years. In 1932, the priest was dispossessed. The same year, Priest Sergius Smorodin began to serve at the Church of the Epiphany of God in the village of Nikolskaya of Moscow County of Moscow Province. On the 5th of December 1932, Father Sergius was arrested by the OGPU department of Mytishchi district, being accused of anti-Soviet agitation. The investigation was rather short. Already on the 14th of January 1933, according to the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the OGPU Troika of Moscow region sentenced 66-year-old priest Sergius Smorodin to 3 years of exile to Kazakhstan. Soon after the arrest of the prior, the Epiphany Church was closed. Probably, due to his old age, the priest managed to avoid the exile, because later during the interrogation, Father Sergius testified that from 1932 to 1934 he lived in the town of Mozhaisk, being dependent on his relatives. After that, he moved to the village of Makeyevo of Zaraisk district, where he served as a priest at the Church of the Icon of Our Lady of the Sign until August 1937, then moving to the town of Mozhaisk, and in September 1937 to the village of Abakumova of Veria district of Moscow region. The priest also pointed out that he had no household from 1932 to 1938. In Abakumova, Archpriest Sergius Smorodin began to serve at a local church of St. Alexander Nevsky, along with another priest, Alexei Ostrumov, who also came to Abakumova after an exile, and at the moment of his arrest was with no certain business. On the 27th of March 1938, during the time of the most severe persecutions of the Russian Orthodox Church, the clergymen were arrested by the NKVD department of Veria district of Moscow region as members of counter-revolutionary group that agitated in the anti-Soviet way and read counter-revolutionary literature. On the 20th of June the same year, according to the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the NKVD Troika of Moscow region sentenced 71-year-old priest Sergius Smorodin and 69-year-old priest Alexei Ostrumov to 10 years of imprisonment in a labor camp. At the moment of the arrest, in the family of Father Sergius, only his wife, Evgenia Nikolaevna Smorodina, was mentioned. She lived in the town of Mozhaisk in Klementyevskaya Street, house 23. The further fate of the clergyman is unknown. After the arrest of the prior, the church of Saint Alexander Nevsky in the village of Abakumovo was closed and ruined. On the 8th of April 1996, priest Sergius Ivanovich Smorodin was rehabilitated by the prosecutor's office of Moscow region. Sergei Grigorievich Sokolov was born on the 21st of November 1880 in the village of Rождествено of Ruza County of Moscow province, to the family of psalmist Grigory Ivanovich Sokolov and his wife Maria Dmitrieva. Sergei became the firstborn child in the family where later sons Victor, Alexander and Alexei were born. After finishing a two-class village school, Sergei Grigorievich entered a spiritual college, but completed only one class of it. In 1904, Sergei Grigorievich was appointed a psalmist to the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker in the village of Matronino of Volokholamsk County of Moscow province. Sergei Grigorievich married and had 2 children. According to the unconfirmed information, psalmist Sergei Sokolov from 1909 to 1914 served at the Cathedral of Christ the Savior in Moscow. According to the clergy register in 1916, Sergei Grigorievich served as a psalmist at the Annunciation Cathedral in Moscow. Since 1919, psalmist Sergei Sokolov began to serve at the Epiphany Cathedral in Yelokhovo, that was one of the biggest parishes in Moscow. By 1923, psalmist Sergei Sokolov was ordained a deacon, later being ordained a priest. After the revolution in the cathedral, Norman church life continued. Daily evening lessons of the law of God for children were organized, while twice a week there were 2-hour religious meetings with adults. In the petition of the council community of the Yelokhovo Cathedral in 1920 it was written, "The parish of the Epiphany is big, speaking about the area, and is populated with mostly workers and the poor. The clergy has much work reciting rites both in the church and at parishioners' places." In the beginning of 1920s, all over the country there was confiscation of church property, allegedly to help the starving of Volga region. On the 24th of April 1922, the rich Moscow church was literally plundered. When it happened, scandalized parishioners came to the cathedral. They tried to stop barbaric confiscation, but the faithful were scattered by an armed squad of Moscow police. Gaulish authorities tried to close the church several times. On the 1st of March 1930, Moscow Regional Executive Committee ordered to close the church. Parishioners gathered 4,800 signatures to save the church, and on the 30th of June the same year, the order of Moscow authorities was cancelled. After the Cathedral of Christ the Savior was destroyed, the Epiphany Cathedral began to play a special role among other churches of Moscow. That is why the accumulating momentum state atheism, anti-religious propaganda and repressions of the Russian Orthodox Church could not go past it. On the 16th of April 1932, being accused in systematic counter-revolutionary agitation, priest Sergius Sokolov was arrested. By that time he lived at the station of Lось in the village of Malaya Mytishi of Mytishi County of Moscow province. Being arrested according to the group case of priest Alexandrov Nikolai Lvovich and others, Father Sergius was accused in grouping around the churches of Moscow, organizing counter-revolutionary agitation among the clergy and spreading different provocational counter-revolutionary gossips. According to the materials of the case, the activity of those people highly increased after Manchuria events and reflected in the anti-Soviet agitation about soon fall of Soviet authorities and the restoration of monarchy. Also, it was confirmed that by monks and clergymen a broad branch net to raise money and products for the exiled clergy by monk charity collection was organized. The correspondence with the clergy was on a regular basis. During the interrogations, the priest declared that he had no acquaintances and that he never did any anti-Soviet agitation or spread any provocational gossips. On the 4th of May 1932, the priest was released. On the 17th of February 1933, according to group case of the counter-revolutionary organization of clergy of the Epiphany Church in Yelokhovo, 8 people were arrested. Among them there was priest Sergei Sokolov. All the arrested were imprisoned in Butyrka. From the materials of the criminal case. At the Church of the Epiphany in Yelokhovo there is a counter-revolutionary group, Sokolov, Soskin, Igilov, Seredinsky and others, who agitated among the faithful, saying to people who arrived from neighbor villages as they must not enter collective farms, that starvation is the result of godlessness and wrong politics of Bolsheviks. Also, they spread gossips about heavy taxes and the need of workers. The agitation was at the church. According to the materials of the case, on the 27th of February 1933, questioned deacon Nikolai Dmitrievsky testified that Seredinsky, Sokolov, Agilov and Soskin talked about the difficulties of life and the persecutions of the church. That it was the fault of the Soviet authorities that followed the teaching of Marx and Lenin. The same day, during the interrogation, Father Sergius Sokolov testified, "I believe in the second advent of Christ, when there is no faith on earth, and this is what we are heading to." On the 15th of March 1933, being accused in anti-Soviet propaganda, according to the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, priest Sergius Sokolov and 5 more convicted were sentenced by the special meeting of the UGPU to 3 years of exile to the Northern Territory. In 1936, upon his release from Kargopol labor camp, Father Sergius came to the village of Matronino of Volokholamsk district of Moscow region, where he began to serve at the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker. However, already on the 27th of November 1937, the priest was arrested for open counter-revolutionary activity, spreading wild slander against Soviet authorities, defeatist statements, and anti-Soviet agitation against elections to the Supreme Soviet. The open counter-revolutionary activity of Father Sergius reflected only in the fact that he collected money, around 400 rubles, in order to maintain the church. During the interrogations, the priest did not plead guilty. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, in the spring of 1937, the priest said the following: "Bolsheviks are preparing for a holiday, while people are starving." In the summer of the same year, he also said that Bolsheviks are not only depleting the rich, but don't forget about the poor, taking the lost money from them. It is all the same, and this authority of Antichrist will not last for long. It will be demolished, and the communists will be eliminated. In October 1937, before the elections to the Supreme Soviet, Father Sergius pointed out the fact that never better reflected the situation in the country. It is written and declared that in the Soviet Union there is liberty. But it is false. People are made to vote for communists only. The priest was accused in the following: Sokolov gathered faithful people and went with them to the forest, where, pretending of collecting mushrooms, he organized his counter-revolutionary activity. He arranged groups of 20, and preached in the church in a counter-revolutionary way. Other popes came to Sokolov. They were sitting with him nights without a break. On the 3rd of December 1937, the Inquisitive Troika of Moscow region sentenced priest Sergius Sokolov to 10 years of labor camps. His further fate is unknown. Ivan Alexandrovich Troitsky was born in 1870 in the village of Daryshi of Kolomna County of Moscow province to the family of priest Alexander Georgievich Troitsky and his wife Nadezhda Ivanovna. At least 2 more sons were born to the family of the clergyman, George and Vladimir. In 1886, Ivan Troitsky finished the Spiritual College of Kolomna on the first class. According to the church register, Ivan Alexandrovich graduated from Moscow Spiritual Seminary, married maiden Alexandra Alexeyevna, and was firstly ordained a deacon, and in 1895 a priest, then serving in different parishes. 2 sons were born to the Troitskys, Alexei and Alexander. In 1905, Father Ivan was appointed to the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker in the village of Lushki of Ruza County of Moscow province. According to the questionnaire of the arrested, in the column of property before 1917, it was stated that the priest had 49 hectares of land with the church, 1 horse, 2 cows, 5 cattle, 1 mill and 1 harvest thresher. On the 6th of May 1913, Father Ivan was ordained an archpriest. In 1918, after post-revolutionary events, priest Ivan Troitsky was arrested in charges of anti-Soviet agitation. By 1921, Archpriest Ivan was released and continued to serve at the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker in the village of Lushki. According to the questionnaire of the arrested, since the beginning of the revolution, the clergyman was deprived of voting rights. According to the same source, in 1930, Archpriest Jan Troitsky began to serve in the town of Ruza, where the same year he was arrested by the OGPU for keeping small silver coins. 80 rubles were found, and according to the 59th article, paragraph 12 of the Criminal Code of Russia, he was sentenced to the free exile away from Moscow region for 3 years. According to the questionnaire of the arrested, the priest who was of Tikhon's orientation was also dispossessed. In February the same year, the brother of Archpriest Ivan, Priest George Troitsky, was sentenced to 3 years of exile to the Northern Territories, where he passed away on the 29th of October 1931. Being exiled away from Moscow region, Archpriest Jan Troitsky moved to Mokshansk district of Penza region, where he began to serve as a priest at the Church of the Dormition of Our Lady in the village of Uspenskaya. According to his own words, he was invited to the village of Uspenskaya by one of the faithful. After a year and a half of service at the Dormition Church, the priest was called by local OGPU department and offered to leave the district. After that, Father Ivan moved to the town of Penza, where he met the wife of the priest of the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary of the village of Sheino, who offered him to occupy the position of her husband, who was about to change his place of service. However, when the archpriest arrived there, he found out that the appointment didn't happen, and after 2 days of living there, he began to search for a place to serve, that he found in the village of Patnitskaya of Bashmakova district of Srednyevolsky region. Archpriest Jan Troitsky moved to the village of Patnitskaya in the end of May 1932, settling in the house of church preposta Vasilisa Zhuchkova. At the local church of Michael the Archangel, the priest served up to his arrest on the 3rd of September the same year. At that time, his family consisted of his wife, Alexandra Alexeyevna, and 2 sons, Alexei and Alexander. Both of them worked as teachers, the first one in the village of Filatovo of Ruza district of Moscow region, while the second in the village of Troitskaya of Kamensky district of Srednyevolsky region. According to the materials of the case, after Pope Troitsky Ivan Alexandrovich arrived in the village of Petnitskaya of Bashmakov district of Srednyevolsky region, among peasants appeared gossips about the soon fall of the Soviet authorities, the decay of collective farms, the facts that the authorities did not care about peasants, etc. Because of such gossips, some collective farmers began to express their dissatisfaction, and on the holiday of the Ascension of Christ, a crowd of collective farmers gathered and began to demand bread, handing in an application to leave their kolkhoz. Among the particular facts of anti-Soviet activity of Archpriest Jan Troitsky, it was mentioned that he read Gospel to women and tried to prove that in the Holy Writ it was written that there would be persecutions of the faithful, that people would have to bear different hardships, that Antichrist would appear upon the globe. But all that would be temporal, because all would be changed and would be as of old. According to the testimony of the witnesses, Father Ivan said to the women coming to his flat, "Hard time has come, peasants are being oppressed," while pointing at himself he added, "Priests are being exiled, and the authorities want to hound them to death and persecute them unfairly." According to the materials of the case, the last fact was not denied by Archpriest Ivan, but he did not plead his guilt, pointing out that during talks with church preposta Vasilisa Zhuchkova, he had not advised her and her daughter to leave a kolkhoz, telling them about his life and hardships, about the time when he was sent away from one district to another and forbidden to serve at one place, and about the fact that he was sentenced by the OGPU and exiled. On the 16th of October 1932, according to the 58th article, paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the elderly archpriest was accused in anti-Soviet agitation against all the events of the Soviet authorities and kolkhoz building, and by the OGPU Troika of the Srednyevolsky region was sentenced to 3 years of exile to the Northern Territory, where his brother George had been exiled 2 years before. No real evidence was brought to the trial. The further fate of Archpriest Ivan Alexandrovich Troitsky is practically unknown. According to the unconfirmed information, the priest passed away during his exile in 1932. According to the unconfirmed information, the son of the priest, Alexei Ivanovich Troitsky, who worked as a teacher at the town of Ruza, was repressed in 1944. More than 50 years later, on the 6th of July 1989, Archpriest Ivan Troitsky was rehabilitated due to the absence of the body of the crime, while in 2002 his brother, Priest George Troitsky, was canonized as a holy martyr and confessor of Russia. Всеволод Alexandrovich Shumov was born on the 18th of November 1880 in the village of Vasilievskoye Chernovo of Možaisk County of Moscow Province to the family of psalmist of the Church of the Nativity of Virgin Mary, Alexander Shumov. After finishing Volokholamsk Spiritual College and graduating from Bethany Spiritual Seminary, Всеволод Alexandrovich married maiden Maria Ivanovna, and in November 1904 was ordained a deacon to the Church of Elijah the Prophet in the village of Barkovo of Dmitrov County of Moscow Province. According to the materials of the archive investigation case, serving in the village of Barkovo of Dmitrov County, the deacon informed to a Zemstvo headmaster against Ivan Sukhov, who had reviled God and shrine. In April 1911, Deacon Всеволод Shumov was ordained a priest to the Church of the Resurrection of Christ of the village of Voskresenki of Podolsk County of Moscow Province. According to the questionnaire of the arrested, in the column of property before 1917, the priest had a house, 50 square meters, 1 horse, 1 cow, 1 pig, and 34 hectares of land. He had to cultivate the land using hired workers. In 1920, Father Всеволод Shumov was appointed to the Church of the Transfiguration of Christ in the village of Nestora of Ruza County of Moscow Province. According to the questionnaire of the arrested, in the column of property before 1929, the priest had a cow, 1 pig, 3 sheep, and 1 hectare of land that he cultivated by his own means using hired horses. In late 1920s or in 1930, Father Всеволод was probably dispossessed, as at the date of his arrest the priest had only a house 40 square meters. On the 1st of January 1930, Father Всеволод left the village of Nestorova for the village of Alexin of Ruza district of Moscow region, where he began to serve at the Church of the Intercession of Virgin Mary. In the materials of the archive investigation case, it was mentioned that the priest was a clergyman without the permission of the village council. On the 9th of February 1933, Priest Всеволод Shumov, Deacon Semyon Znamensky, Psalmist Alexander Rozanova, and the female peasant Maria Griznova were arrested. At the date of his arrest, the family of Father Всеволод consisted of his wife Maria Ivanovna, 56 years old, and his son, who lived in Moscow in dependence of his aunt and studied in a university. In the decree about the selection of the measure of restraint, dated the 10th of February the same year, it was mentioned that a priest, being the enemy of the Soviet authorities, was proved to be guilty in creating a counter-revolutionary group of women of clergy origin and traders, and counter-revolutionary agitation using them. The agitation aimed on disrupting political and agricultural events, as well as ruining the kolkhoz. Despite there was no evidence, the case was sent to the Troika to review. Already on the 8th of April 1933, according to the 58th article, paragraphs 10 and 11 of the Criminal Code of Russia, Priest Всеволод Shumov, Deacon Semyon Znamensky, Psalmist Alexander Rozanova were sentenced by the OGPU Troika of Moscow region to 3 years of exile in labor camps. Only female peasant Maria Griznova was released. Unfortunately, there is no information about the further fate of Priest Всеволод Shumov.
Ivan Konstantinovich Fedotov was born on the 27th of May 1879 in the village of Grigorovo of Vereya country of Moscow province to the peasants' family of Konstantin Ivanov and his wife Domna Grigorovna. The newborn was baptized the following day at the Church of the Resurrection of Christ of the village of Vasilievskoye by local priest Pavel Smirnov. According to then confirmed information, in the family there was also son Jacob as well as daughters Pelageya and Agrippina. According to the materials of the investigation case, Ivan Fedotov got primary education at a village school. On the 2nd of February 1898, at the age of 18, Ivan Konstantinovich married 18-year-old maiden Irina Dmitrievna. It is known that on the 31st of July 1903, son Vasily was born to the Fedotovs. On the 29th of December 1905, San Seraphim. On the 1st of July 1907, San Mitrofan. On the 12th of March 1910, Daughter Claudia. On the 26th of February 1912, Daughter Antonina. While on the 15th of May 1916, San Alexei. All the children were baptized at the Resurrection Church of the village of Vasilevskaya. In 1920s, Ivan Fedotov was the regent of the church choir where both adults and children were singing. According to the list of clergy of Mozhaevsk Diocese in 1923 to 1925, Ivan Konstantinovich was mentioned as the psalmist of the Church of the Resurrection of Christ of the village of Vasilevskaya of Ruza County of Moscow Province. In 1931, psalmist Ivan Fedotov was arrested by the OGPU Department of Ruza District of Moscow Region and according to Article 58, Paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia was sentenced to 2 years of exile. By the time of his arrest, Ivan Konstantinovich worked as a handicraftsman and a tailor. Upon his release, Ivan Fedotov returned to his native village of Grigorovo and continued to serve as a psalmist at the Church of the Resurrection of Christ of the nearby village of Vasilevskaya. The persecutions of the Russian Orthodox Church that had never been before didn't bypass the village of Vasilevskaya. At night on the 24th of August 1937, being accused in counter-revolutionary agitation, both the prior of the Resurrection Church, Archpriest Nikolai Vinogradov, and the chairman of the Church Council, Semyon Ivanovich Kulkov, were arrested, being later sentenced to 10 years of labor camps. During the investigation on the 9th of October 1937, psalmist Ivan Fedotov, who also was a member of the Church Council, was arrested by the NKVD Department of Ruza District of Moscow Region 2. Already on the 15th of November the same year, being accused in counter-revolutionary agitation as well as public speeches to defend the enemies of the nation, according to the Article 58, Paragraph 10 of the Criminal Code of Russia, the 58-year-old psalmist Ivan Fedotov was sentenced to 10 years of imprisonment, being exiled to Belbetlav. The further fate of psalmist Ivan Fedotov is unknown. On the 7th of May 2001, Ivan Konstantinovich Fedotov was rehabilitated by the persecutors of Moscow.
Like foe of the nation, I am imprisoned, and in the yard I think it's so cool. But Christ with me, and I have freedom. With Jesus everywhere I feel good. My soul is serene, God's will be done. I don't fear for the Church of Christ. The way is narrow, but consolation yet to come. I seek my Lord throughout all my life, and I feel joy as Jesus Christ with me, although soon I will be put to death. But I am calm, and nothing I will need, as Christ my light, my life, my breath. People who suffered in those hard times were not apostles, but by their martyrdom they in some way repeated the road of life of the first disciples of Christ, those who were hated, persecuted and executed by the pagan Roman Empire. Like centuries ago, each of them had their own Colosseum, Butovo firing range, Solovki, White Sea Baltic Canal camps, or countless number of so-called labor camps spread across the whole country. We should know about all these people, as well as about the troubled time, which like a 70-year-long hurricane blew over our country. Similar things have already been before, and we have to understand and remember it in order not to repeat mistakes of the past ages in the future. Undoubtedly, the long suffering and washed in blood of warriors and martyrs land of Rus still hides many unknown names of heroes who gave their lives for their beliefs. Something unimportant as their executors might have thought. But such heroes in the times of trouble have become a real example of uncrushable will and faith. And in the period of theomachy, negation of historical roots and ways, desecration of relics, people who died for their nation and faith eventually became a beam of light, which has struggled through the darkness of godlessness, being for us a vivid example of true love towards God and the motherland.